Hello, everyone. I haven't been reading very much from Widening Circles, but tonight I have time and I'm willing, and I'm not obsessed with my daughter's health. So I'm not sure where I left off, but I will begin with I'm having a slow go with Joanna Macy. I quite love her as a teacher, and I'm sure that this book is going to become really important to us all. But I find it slow going. So it was 1939. War was gradually engulfing Europe, and Europe was home for most of my schoolmates. Some had fled across the borders with parents who now took asylum in America. Others were children of diplomats, artists, and merchants whose livelihoods had brought them to New York, where they were stuck now for the duration. It seemed that all of them, whether 7 years old or 17, had lived in places now threatened or occupied by Hitler's armies, all except me. From newsreels and magazines, I could imagine the scenes that my schoolmates and their families had lived through, and that their relatives on the continent were still experiencing. These ravages were seldom mentioned in the classroom. Ours was the classical lycée curriculum, unperturbed by current events. It was more important to learn about Vercingetorix, the club-wielding chieftain who defended Gaul from Julius Caesar, than about the ordeal of the 20th century France. When Madame Brodin, my favorite teacher, mentioned the fall of Poland one morning and wept for about 5 seconds, her pupils watched solemnly. Then, immediately, and for the next 2 days, in the lavatories, hallways, and courtyard, they performed exaggerated imitations. If the pain of loss and dislocation didn't disappear by itself, there was one thing you could do with it. You could vent it on the place where you were forced to be, on stupid, ugly, barbaric America. Since the New World generously provided much to scoff at, my fellow students never ran out of things to mock and bemoan. So as I struggled my way into French culture, I heard my own culture demeaned. That was worse than the teasing I received for beginner's French. But I was not brave enough, let alone fluent enough, to defend my country. And after a while, I lost conviction. As I made my way at the lycée, I learned to congeal much: my loneliness, my embarrassment for my country, the extent of my ignorance of French, the anxiety I carried with me each morning from home. Concealment helped me survive, but it brought me shame in its wake. If feelings have to be hidden, I concluded, they must be unacceptable. When the moment came in June to board the Empire State Express at Grand Central Station to return to the farm, I felt as if I had been holding my breath the whole year. Once the train finally started, it seemed to rumble on for ages in the dark. In the dirty window, I saw my own face against the blackness of the tunneled walls. They were sootier than the subway walls I'd grown accustomed to, but these underground passages seemed almost foreign, for they were leading out into a season in the sun. But not straight away. For when we emerged on 97th Street, the light was gray, shadowed on both sides by blocks of tenements. For miles, we rattled along close to their windows, so close I could see inside the dim clutter, see the faces watching us go by, and sometimes meet their eyes, the impassive eyes of those who know they cannot escape. Spotty seemed disinterested when I finally located him in a far stretch of the north pasture, but I expected him to be wild and hard to catch after long spring months on the loose. I rattled a pail of oats enticingly. He trotted up close, then shied out of reach and played the game over and over until I grew cross and tearful with impatience. Finally, he thrust his nose straight into the pail and let me swing a rope over his head and scratch his neck on his favorite scratching place. Mud was caked on him from rolling by the stream, and burrs tangled his tail and knotted his mane. But back by the barn, I slowly groomed him with curry comb and brush. No impatience then. That June grooming had the effect of ritual. It steadied the mind and eased the heart. How good it was when we were through. Simply to lean against him, my cheek rested higher against his withers than it had the summer before, but I felt the same. In those moments, I let myself go still. That summer on the farm, I tried to read the Bible. All night in my cherished, very own room, I sat up in bed with the big, heavy book braced on my knees. I had taken it from Uwe's study. It smelled old and musty and earnest, like my pilgrim ancestors. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. I started on the first page, figuring it would just read straight through. My motivation was strong but vague. I think I wanted to be good or find some way to become good. But mostly, I wanted a vision and a blessing. I figured there had to be a meaning to my people's faith more riveting and real than what was conveyed in Sunday school. Doggedly, I persisted through the generations of Noah and Shem and Abraham, but the children of Israel seemed about as relevant to my life as Vercingetorix, and even less interesting. What interested me was to find out about God, or rather, God and me, and whether there was some promise in the mystery, some way of getting at it. I attached little importance to the fact that God did not answer my prayers. When John and I got asthma attacks after playing in the hayloft and I had us kneel together and pray for relief, I was not disheartened, really, that we kept on wheezing. Or when in Mama's bedroom on that Christmas Eve, I prayed to God that the door would hold against Papa's pushing, and it gave way. I do not take that as a sign that God did not exist. I hardly expected God to conform to my notions of what God should do. On the contrary, when I didn't surround him with demands and expectations, there was more space where we both could breathe and be real. The God I was reading about in the Bible did not seem very spacious. He wanted you to be good and obedient, period. That felt not very different from the world of the Lycée, which seemed to want to be smart and cynical, period. Neither allowed much room for fallibility or grief. The God I was reading about in the Bible did not seem very spacious. He wanted you to be good and obedient, period. I'm reading this again for myself. That felt not very different from the world of the Lycée, which seemed to want you to be smart and cynical, period. Neither allowed for much room or fallibility or grief. From the maple tree, I could see Uwe working in his vegetable garden, moving up and down the rows behind the house and plow. He used red for the job. Now that Spotty was released from farm work, and he proceeded, as always, without hurry, hour after hour, stopping only to toss a surfaced rock, and then lurching forward again, pulled by the plow, the reins slung over his shoulders, his hair ruffling in the air, silver as milkweed. Uwe's attention seemed so steady. He clearly wasn't wondering if he should be doing something else, or if he was tired and should finish another day, or if this was a suitable activity. Farmer to drive the tractor over and do the whole job in 40 minutes. Or if this was a suitable activity for a 76-year-old preacher, and he maybe should just ask the tenant farmer to drive the tractor over and do the whole job in 40 minutes. Watching him plod up and down the rows behind the plow, I tried to imagine what it would be like to live that way, with such a calm and doubt-free mind, to live my New York City life like that, without wishing it were different, without hating it so much, to just go to school and not feel stuck inside my loneliness, to ride up the elevator and walk into the apartment and not feel trapped in my own fear. Maybe the secret of being peaceful like Uwe was to focus your attention only on what you were doing at that very moment, on what was right under your feet or in your hands, and to close your ears to what you did not want to hear. That would spare you a lot of grief. The problem was that I didn't think I wanted to tune things out. Where is the angle where you see only one chin? That's what I want to find. Late one afternoon when I was 10, my grandfather and I were alone together in the front parlor. He was sitting in the rocker by the window, and I perched sideways on his lap, looking out toward the road. I was watching the western sky and the maple tree silhouetted against it. Under me, Uwe's knees were bony, and his hand was warm and light on my back. I don't remember what we had been saying or if we had been talking at all. I rarely, if ever, talked at the farm about life in New York. I didn't want to spoil the summer. And furthermore, Papa was Uwe's son, so I don't know what prompted the words he spoke then. They seemed to just come out of the blue, or out of that apricot-colored sky. Come unto me, all ye who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. I had not heard those words before. Instantly, I turned on Uwe's lap to face him. Who said that? Jesus said it, Uwe told me. God says it through Jesus. And he continued, take my yoke upon you and lean of me. Learn of me, and you shall find rest unto your soul. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Matthew 11. Say it again, I said, and repeated the words after him. Come unto me, all ye who labor and are heavy laden. I was stunned. I thought of all the people who lived with heavy burdens. They came now to my mind, the faces in the tenement windows, the outnumbered troops fighting for France, even my father. And when I heard that invitation, I knew I was among them. That invitation did not alter the circumstances of my life. It removed no hardships, yet it changed everything. All right, that's the end of her prelude, Joanna Macy, Widening Circles. Finally, it takes many times to get to the end. Tomorrow, or whenever I read to you next, it'll be Montaigne's Tower. Slow going, this book, but worthy of all kinds of magic. Thanks for joining me here. I have a new angle that I'm showing you, figuring out what I want to show you. I should have brushed my hair. I have 8 nails left in this coronavirus. And then I'll be a real lesbian. Oh, good night.